The sun boiled the bones of the earth. Men walking 2,000 kilometers from Jerusalem carried faith on their backs. But soon they would unearth another truth buried deep beneath hollow prayers and thin rations. The desert swallowed their screams and thirst. Each step brought a flurry of dust that mingled with blood, sweat, and desperation, marking their passage toward a land washed in the promise of salvation. But the promise wore thin as the sun blazed overhead. The shadows lengthened, and so did their fears. Those who set out beneath the banner of Christ grew weary, their spirits gnawed at by hunger and doubt. The campfire flickered weakly, and faces, once radiant with zeal, now appeared diminutive, hollowed out by the weight of unfulfilled destiny. "Where's Jacob?" whispered one, eyes scanning the band of their brothers. Silence answered back, louder than the howling wind that cut through their camp. The air grew heavy with unsaid words, with the breathing that came hard, filled with the stench of just above hunger. They gathered, huddling around the crackling fire, yet the warmth was a mere memory. They could almost taste death slipping through their fingers like sand. "I pray, but my whispers fall to the earth," another man breathed, staring into the dark. "God tests us," said one, voice quivering with hope. "Or we've been cast aside," another muttered, eyes burning with betrayal, leading his gaze to the horizon as if anticipating salvation there. The hours stretched. The tension reached a breaking point, turning men into ghosts of what they used to be. As the days grew heavier, provisions became as scarce as their faith. A hunger greater than hunger for survival, for life itself plagued them. Shadows danced around the fire, while whispers echoed in the dark, breeding distrust. Men once bound by brotherhood now eyed each other with suspicion, drawing lines in the dust. The camp's morale frayed like threadbare fabric, and fractures emerged within the ranks. "Some must be sacrificed for the many," one declared beneath a crescent moon, his knife gleaming under starlight. "Not them," another murmured. But the voice was hoarse, and no one heard it soon enough. In the desert's endless expanse, they became warriors, or rather, they began to define that dark path. Men of faith weighed against the hard steel of survival. Days turned into an eternity of struggles. Jacob had not returned with food, and rumors snaked through the camp like poisonous serpents. Men eyed each other with suspicion, the blame shifting faster than the wind shifted the sand. When fear settles, reason falters, leaving darkness to flourish, and the poison spread. With hunger nipping at their heels, men cast glances toward their companions. Possibility collided with despair. "Enough!" one man yelled, fueled not by righteousness but by desperation. "We cannot die like dogs." He looked up at those gathered, faces hardened by the sun, shadows of their former selves. "We are chosen to cleanse the path. But cleanse whom?" The irony slashed deep, stinging like the heat radiating off the cracked ground. The brothers, left torn apart by ideology, found themselves on opposite sides of a growing chasm. "If we burn the weak," one said, his resolve growing stronger with every heartbeat, "we shall live." "Do you even know what you're saying?" the other cried. "Or have you lost yourself to this madness?" The embers of their campfire flickered, leaving behind a smoldering reminder of the choices before them. Shadows crept closer, the night enveloping them as the senses sharpened into terror. Beneath the canopy of soft stars, heavy hearts beckoned darker thoughts. As the evening deepened, a decision hummed low through the dust. A spark ignited in their minds, lust for survival veiled beneath the guise of righteousness. God tests us, a voice would whisper, yet those words slipped into faded echoes. The wind rose, carrying the shadows of betrayal and quietude. Without warning, chaos reigned as thoughts morphed from mere survival to a fight for dominion among the living. And in that calm before the storm, decisions were made among glances and fleeting confessions. Who would die? Who would endure? As the hours dragged by, resting men awoke to the flickering shadow upon their tents. The sounds of the night merged with hushed whispers heavier than the presence of fear itself. Conspiratorial murmurs danced along the edges of their minds, twisting loyalty into something darker. When night draped darkness over the land, the outlines of their comrades became indistinct. Gone was the sanctity of their message. The lines blurred, and all could feel the air throb with unresolved tension. Out of necessity, bonds forged in faith began to wane, unraveling the very fabric of their united mission. Little did they know how quickly the light dims when darkness is so near. And in the failing light of humanity, only the steel glinted brighter. When men succumb to their darkest fears, it is their shared naivety that seals their fate. A chilling silence overtook the camp, pregnant with an expectancy laden with treachery. And still, the night held its breath, observing the choices that would soon birth consequences no man could alter. As the moon climbed its solitary path across the sky, illuminating the camp in an eerie glow, desperation coiled tighter around their throats. Hands gripped weapons, not in defense of humanity, but in anticipation of what was to come. Faces once bright with brotherhood now bore grim masks, chiseled from shadows and resolve. The first whispers emerged, soft but unyielding. Every name etched in memory became a liability, every gesture a potential sign of weakness. "They are slowing us down," one of the men murmured to another, his voice low, conspiratorial. "Kill the weak, and the strong shall rise," another echoed darkly, his eyes alight with a twisted sense of purpose. Beneath the canvas tents thick with dust, silence hung heavy, burdening souls with the weight of unspoken truths. Hours passed. Shadows crept, closing in, even as the men convinced themselves it was for the best. They would purify their ranks, cut away the rot before it consumed the whole. A leader emerged among them, one who could promise survival and victory. He stood tall, legs braced, face etched with the resolve of those who have weathered countless trials. "We are not bound to nurture the weak," he declared. "Survival demands sacrifice." Among the ranks, a young man hesitated, a flicker of doubt sparking within him. "But what are we becoming? A band of murderers searching for light amidst a cloud of our own darkness?" The leader's gaze bore into him. "We were chosen for greatness, to cleanse the path. Do not falter in your faith." The words reverberated, resonating with those hungry for meaning yet cast adrift in the belly of despair. They were but knotted husks of men lost in a world that no longer bent to their will. In the stillness, the decision became inevitable, an ugly necessity masked by the semblance of righteousness. When dawn broke, the desert bore witness to a transformation that would echo through time. Faces that had once sung praises found themselves altered, hardened by choices made beneath the veil of night. They awakened not to the light, but to a reckoning laid bare. The sun hung low in the sky, casting elongated shadows across the terrain, which bore witness to their actions. They moved like specters, drawn to each other, yet shrouded in distrust. In those moments, the bonds of brotherhood became chains, dragging them toward oblivion. "Gather them," the leader commanded, voice steady. "We must act before the sun sets again." The group formed, each face carrying the remnants of brotherhood, now twisted by the encroaching dark. With a muted nod, they nodded, the decision crystallizing in their hearts. With dread bearing down upon their shoulders, they approached their former companions, their brothers in arms, left trembling in fear. The fire crackled ominously, every snap punctuating the silence that filled the air. "I hope you find peace," one would whisper, words a fragile mask covering deeper emotions. But peace had abandoned them long ago, dissolved like dew beneath a rising sun. What was once their camp stood on a precipice, teetering between salvation and damnation. The call was made, and as men ran forth, those once loyal became prey within the jaws of desperation, souls hunted under the pretense of sacrifice. The darkness didn't answer. Instead, it became a wall between them, separating the chosen from the damned. And in that moment, the shadows began to seep through the cracks, tangled fingers reaching out to embrace all they could ensnare. As silence fell like a heavy shroud, that sacred bond, the very essence of who they were, unraveled into something unrecognizable. "God, forgive us," a voice broke the air, faint and trembling, but it was swallowed swiftly by the sound of cruel resolve. Each pulse of fear electrified their limbs, urging them toward an act that transcended mere survival. They were no longer men seeking solace, but wolves hungry for dominance. Those who would rise against their own brothers sowed in betrayal. Yet guilt lingered in the air, a ghost that whispered to each soul, a dark reminder of a time before savagery claimed their hearts. The growing distance between them punctured their once unyielding faith, severing the ties they had held dear. And so the darkness danced, enveloping the camp, laughing softly at the folly of men who thought themselves beyond redemption. In that moment, the air was thick with history, with choices stored within the folds of time, waiting to come forth like repercussions from within the heart of the earth. As midnight approached, the men assembled anew, not to sing of salvation, but to revel in the chaos they had unleashed. And amongst them stood a brother, pale eyes shining with something more than longing, hunger, guilt, and a twisted desire for a victory they could claim. "What will become of us?" a faint voice meandered through the gathering. "Survive," the leader replied, voice a low growl amidst gravel. "We will build an army, no longer cowed by weakness." The sun would rise, and with it the promise of new beginnings, but it would be painted in blood and ash. Each heartbeat echoed a tumultuous truth. They danced on the edge of a blade, where survival bore the mark of God's abandonment. That night, the darkness wrapped itself around the camp like a shroud, and what had once been a congregation of faithful turned into a den of wolves. The fire crackled under the desert stars, the embers twisting in the wind, giving life to shadows that played upon familiar faces now marred with doubt and resolve. And somewhere within the chaos, the heart of brotherhood thumped, faltering under the weight of mortality. A flicker of a thought gleamed through the haze. There was no honor in what they planned, no glory in cruelty masked with purpose. But who could lay a claim to morality when survival clawed and gnashed upon their very souls? As midnight billowed heavily across the terrain, a verse intermingled with the howling wind. God tests became a mantra they chanted, folding want and need into a shroud of righteousness. "We are chosen, the leader reiterated, raising his sword to the heavens, "to cleanse this path of the weak among us." And from within, a voice responded almost in silence but loud enough to be heard. "But in what way do we rise, if we become the very monsters we seek to burn?" "Silence!" came the retort, crackling like the fire as hands gripped swords, sheathed in sweat and dread. The breath paused, the air sharp with disbelief, as the brothers hesitated. They had crossed that null line that twisted morality into a grotesque shape, and now, at the cusp of a frantic decision, they felt the ground tremble beneath their feet. Each man remained rooted, struggling internally as blood flowed unseen through the darkness. In that tense, electric moment, one stepped back. "I can't do this," he murmured, eyes wide and legs trembling. Another man reached forward and gripped his arm, a gesture of solidarity, or perhaps a shackle of despair. "You dare question us now?" "No!" he cried, breaking away, his feet stumbling upon the ground beneath him. "I chose to walk with faith, not to bury it under the weight of fear." For an instant, their surroundings cascaded into silence, each choice they made rippling deep into the fabric of their shared existence. Was it faith or fright that had brought them to this brink? "Courage does not lie in the sword or the knife," the dissenting man continued, desperate to rekindle the flicker of humanity. "But in the bonds we share with one another, then let us forge our bonds anew," bellowed the leader, enshrined in the unwavering resolve of darkness. "Not in weakness, but in strength." But the gathering no longer held the same fervor. Doubts began to roll like waves, crashing against the shores of certainty. Beneath the flame-lit tent, an unrelenting whisper bled across the airone of remorse, lingering, collecting dust like shattered promises left behind in the wake of delusion. And it was there, in that reluctant threshold, that fear coalesced, weaving among the men, forming a tapestry of dread that wrapped around them like shackles. "We are chosen," the leader echoed again, though the words rang hollow now, reverberating into silent voids. Who were they to choose? Those chosen were no better than those they would ultimately betray. "Chosen by whom?" one of the men murmured, voice quaking. "By God, or by our own twisted desires." As the quiet crept deeper, shadows stretched, and the weight of its truth descended upon the camp. This was not merely survival, but a siren song tempting them toward a grave of their own making. The clamor quieted as they lingered in their doubts, suspended between the world they once knew and the abyss awaiting them. Then, the moment broke. "Stand with me!" The leader rallied once more, passion blinding him. "Let us cleanse this place, purge what is weak, for only the strong will find favor." Fear now ignited like brush fire, igniting the hearts of men who were once bound by a simpler faith, and with it spread an unwelcome certainty. "Brothers," he called, emboldening their resolve, "we are the army of God. The righteous shall not falter in the face of those who threaten our mission." The men who had stood hesitantly coalesced. With men brimming with fury, a violent shift transformed their muted concerns into raw ambition. Each heartbeat rang deep within their chests, thrumming like a drum of war. They were warriors now, burdened by the weight of belief and choice, blending light and dark in the crucible of human experience. "Move swiftly and with purpose. Let the night witness our strength." He brandished his blade, rallying them into a wild fervor as the fire blazed bright, embers soaring into the heavens like shooting stars marking a new path. And so, under the shroud of night, decisions were cast that would echo through their very souls. They charged forth, driven by an unyielding desire to carve their legacy in a land steeped in blood. But in the quiet recesses of their hearts, twinges of doubt lingered still, reminders of a compass lost beneath the weight of destruction. They trembled, afraid to confront the scars left on their souls. Would the dawn herald true salvation, or a reckoning steeped in vengeance? As they moved forward into the abyss, it was the cries of the weak that remained suspended in the air, woven into the fabric of their fate here, haunting reminder of humanity tethered to the burden of survival. The march surged forward, voices rising into the night, a chaotic symphony echoing through the desolate wilderness. They were men transformed, stripped of reverence, bound only by a singular desire to seize control of their chaotic destiny. Faith, once a guiding light, had become a flickering candle struggling against the gusts of doubt and despair. As they traversed the landscape, the air thickened, each step heavy with the stench of betrayal. Their previous lives now felt like thin paper scattered across an unrelenting wind, merely memories drowned in the mire of desperation. The desert itself seemed to lean in, judging them, embracing them as both sanctuary and executioner. With each mile, the bond amongst them frayed under the strain of purpose. A reckoning approached, but at what cost? And yet still, they pressed on, overtaken by the bloodlust of survival. In the depths of the night, silvery moonlight cast long shadows, stretching and twisting, merging the real and the unreal. Each man wrestled with his instincts, their faces reflecting uncertainties once buried deep. The weight on their shoulders felt like an impending storm, brewing with violence behind their eyes. "What do we do with those left behind?" one asked, his voice trembling like a leaf caught in the breeze. "We strengthen our resolve," the leader shouted, fervor igniting the hearts around him. "We uphold the vision of purity. Those who cannot contribute will only drag us down." Murmurs of agreement swept through the ranks, warmed by the flames of shared resolve. Yet, buried deep in their souls, a voice whispered back a question that met the simplicity of resolve with profound conflict. How far had they drifted from the path? The shadows danced as they approached the remnants of the camp where their brothers had begun to fade. Each face they passed now spoke of fear in whispers beyond comprehension, afraid to confront what lay ahead. They had become specters, lost in a tapestry of dusk woven tight around their fading spirits. Reaching the place where Jacob once stood strong and resolute, teeming with vision emptiness reigned. The echoes of laughter faded, crackling like distant thunder in the throes of corruption. Where laughter had warmed a heart, silence now stretched like an abyss, ready to swallow any lingering humanity. "Search for them," the leader commanded. "Bring forth the weak. They must choose whether they stand with us or against us." The men ran forward, hearts pumping in sync with the drums of war echoing in their chests, desperation morphing into something akin to excitement. Atomized, unified fear turned into the hope of dominancian embrace of something far more dangerous. The camp sprawled unevenly under the moonlight, twisted forms beyond recognition huddled like phantoms along the periphery. A darkness thick and tangible settled around them, woven into the fabric of their purpose. Each heartbeat pulsed louder in their ears, drowned by the silence of what they were about to do. A figure stirred in the shadows, a man who had once fought side by side with them. "Please don't do this," he croaked, eyes wide and shaky. "We can still find a way back." "Back to what?" The leader's voice sang like an executioner's decree. "Back to weakness? Back to innocence? No, you will either stand firm with us or perish with your brethren." As brothers gathered, a wall of indifference closed around the dissenting man. He implored them, eyes brimming with tears. "You do not understand what you are doing. This path leads to destruction, to death." With a swish, the leader's sword gleamed bright as it cut through the air toward the man who had once respected him. "Death is the sanctuary for the weak. We will not waste time grieving those too fragile to fight." His blade found its mark caught briefly between the tearing of flesh and the finality of a gasp. The vibrant life once ignited in that man faded into nothingness under the waning moonlight. Surrounded by the haunting echo of fate, the men flinched. For a fleeting moment, a taste of doubt stirred among them. Together, they had taken a life, and with it, a part of their own. "Choose wisely, brothers." The leader's voice was raw, vibrating through the very earth they stood upon. "We rise as warriors now, shaken hands reclaiming the strength that once was." And yet, behind the mask of bravado, a low hum of anguish persisted. Beneath the layers of courage, those left behind lay intertwined with their choices, their spirits entwined in the web of ambition braided through darkness. "Will we be any better?" one of the men whispered among the gathering shadows, feeling the weight of the world relentless underfoot. "These acts will haunt our path endlessly. Only the strong deserve to walk free," the leader proclaimed fiercely, eyes darting from face to face, igniting a collective mantra etched within the dance of firelight. "We will cleanse the earth of weakness, rising with strength into our chosen fate." As the chorus of yes rang in approval, shadows began to inch closer, whispering secrets that burrowed deep within the core of their beings, truths too heavy to carry yet anchored in fearful loyalty. And so they moved onward, cloaked in defiance, each heartbeat echoing a pulse that chained them tighter to the choices being made. As the horizon began to light with shades of dawn, they forged a path toward a destiny obscured by dirt and blood, not yet written, but already paved with their sins. To honor the lost, they would march into the heart of darkness, afraid, yet unable to turn back, believing fervently in the lies they crafted to silence the truth left buried in the shadows of their hearts.